bothered the assistant to Lorne Michaels, who is the executive producer of Saturday Night Live, the famous TV show.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
she said, "What would it take for you to stop calling?" So I said, "Thank you for asking." So in my early 20s, I ended up going down. I got myself an interview with Lorne Michaels and I got the job. So for 4 years, I worked my way up as an assistant. What does this have to do with public speaking? Well, I watched, Spencer, some of the most extraordinary performers in the world on a weekly basis. And another was watching and observing and taking mental notes of what the top performers in the world do. And I was on a bus where I managed a comedy tour. So I had these up and coming comedians on the bus and I was just peppering them with questions like, how do you prepare? How do you get over your fears? Do you love this? What happens if people don't respond to you? Put myself out there. So I got this talk. That talk did not open up a door. It did not get me an agent. It did not get me an opportunity. It gave me confidence. It created a mindset that, oh, I just went to Luxembourg. I gave a live talk for 18 minutes in front of at a business school in this castle in Luxembourg. If you're listening and you say, why should I speak? Well, that you have to answer that question. And am I charismatic enough? I didn't consider myself any of those things. It was on some level working on it. Most of any success I've had doing 70 speeches a year now started with.
Welcome to today's conversation with Jamie Mason Cohen. I've had the privilege of knowing Jamie for a few years now through my time at Prezi, and I've long respected his thoughtfulness and talent as a public speaker and storyteller. Jamie is a self-professed introvert who has transformed his fear of public speaking into a powerful tool for connection and leadership. His journey began with a Dale Carnegie course and led him to work behind the scenes at Saturday Night Live, where he gleaned insights from some of the world's best performers. His experiences at Saturday Night Live shaped his understanding of effective communication and storytelling. Jamie has also delivered a TEDx talk that significantly boosted his confidence in public speaking. And he since then channeled this confidence into teaching, engaging one of the toughest audiences there is, kids and teenagers. His ability to connect with people from all walks of life is remarkable. Jamie understands people. He helps executives, especially those without formal business training, to harness their unique strengths and tackle challenges head on. If you ever feel stuck or want to boost your leadership skills, he's somebody you definitely want to work with. So let's dive into my conversation with Jamie, where we cover everything from finding your confidence as a speaker to how you can start to become a confident and successful speaker. Jamie, welcome. It's so good to see you on here.
Thank you, Spencer. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So I thought it might be quite nice to maybe share with people a little bit of your backstory. You have obviously like an enormous amount of experience, but where did that experience start? Like talk us through like when you first had to do a talk or a presentation, what would it have been?
Well, I would say there's briefly three pivotal moments in my public speaking journey today. And you know that expression, it takes a lifetime to become an overnight success. So this is not, I didn't just show up and I do this for a living. So one was I took the Dale Carnegie public speaking course at 20 years old when I went to the University of Western Ontario in Canada, where I'm in, just outside of Toronto. So I won based on the other peers who were all older than me, the person most likely to do some form of public speaking. And I was more of a shy, introverted kid when I was younger. So that gave me a boost of confidence. So that was the first moment. And then after college, I applied. Well, I bothered the assistant to Lorne Michaels, who is the executive producer of Saturday Night Live, the famous TV show.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
she said, "What would it take for you to stop calling?" So I said, "Thank you for asking." So in my early 20s, I ended up going down. I got myself an interview with Lorne Michaels and I got the job. So for 4 years, I worked my way up as an assistant. What does this have to do with public speaking? Well, I watched, Spencer, some of the most extraordinary performers in the world on a weekly basis. And I think comedians are often the best performers because they have a combination of public speaking, making people laugh is a real challenge, and engaging people day in, day out is what I observed. So I got a little bit of the bug, even though I didn't want to do what they were doing and I didn't have that talent. And then I became a high school teacher and a college professor. So what I watched at Saturday Night Live, I ended up sublimating and implementing and trying out hundreds of times
Yeah,
for students. And everyone who's listening to this has been a student, and you know how challenging kids can be to grab their attention.
exactly. One of the toughest audiences.
Yes. Yeah. So it was these different experiences, one in a formal course, another was watching and observing and taking mental notes of what the top performers in the world do. And I was on a bus where I managed a comedy tour. So I had these up and coming comedians on the bus, and I was just peppering them with questions like, how do you prepare? How do you get over your fears? Do you love this? What happens if people don't respond to you? And then I brought that into a real job as a teacher for over a decade before you and I met when I was speaking professionally. It was cumulatively bringing these different experiences to pass
Together.
and to fruition.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to unpack with those three things. I don't know where to start now. But so, like, we'll come back to Saturday Night Live because I also want to talk about improv comedy because I've been doing improv comedy the last couple of years. So, if you get me talking about that, we'll be here for a long time. But let's go back to the Dale Carnegie course because I always think it's, you know, what led you to take that in the first place, because that's a, in some regards it's a bold move to think, okay, I'm going to go do this and make myself vulnerable, and I think that's where, there may be people listening who have those fears about, can I go do that thing, can I actually learn how to speak? So is there any more detail that you can remember of, like, leading up to going for the first time?
I read the book.
Ah,
I read his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People,
yeah,
and I wanted to improve my social skills.
yeah,
I was shy. I didn't have a lot of friends at university, not close friends. I had other students in the dorms.
yeah,
And I thought, oh, there was a offer for a scholarship for one student with adults outside of the university to take this 6-week course. So I thought, why don't I apply? So I applied, I had an interview, I got it. And then I just dove into those weekly courses. I loved them. I loved interacting. I loved the idea of how to engage with a small audience to get that feedback. And I was very sensitive. I still am. Um, but I found that it made me stronger. It made me more confident in speaking with people. And the nerves that I had growing up and speaking in front of other people were still there. I could just manage it more from the reps and the skill set that Dale Carnegie provided.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's such a good point because I think, like, sometimes people don't realize we're all nervous. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. You can still have days where suddenly you're nervous 10 minutes before you go live, or so it's something that I always say is, like, very human. It's based on biology. We're all the same, and we all just, nobody gets rid of nerves. We just learn how to manage it. That's the thing of it. And I think, like, what you were saying about about it kind of is a bit of a segue into the Saturday Night Live and comedy and stand up, because I think one of the things that I definitely, when I started doing improv comedy classes about 2 years ago now, is that it was one of the hardest things to do for me, to go on a stage where I have done zero preparation and you just have to let it all go and get out of your head and just purely focus on the other person. And I think, like, sometimes finding those moments, whether it's like a Dale Carnegie course or improv or something where, like you say, it's a small group of people, it's supportive, and you can just make mistakes and it's okay. I think, like, it's an important message for people to know.
Yeah, the way that I see it with speaking and what improv has to do with it and connecting with Saturday Night Live is improv, ad-libbing. When you ad-lib, you're preparing to fail.
So, 1 second, whilst I've got you, this is a brand new YouTube channel. It would help me so much if you could subscribe and help me spread the word. You're amazing. Thank you.
Fail. Improvising, you're preparing to succeed.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that even though you see someone improvising, like you took an improv course, if you're really present and you're prepared, meaning you're going in there with a mindset of, I'm confident, I'm capable, I'm going to just have fun, I'm not going to take myself too seriously, I'm going to really listen actively to the person who is my partner or the group, then you're preparing to succeed. You're not just winging it and leaving things to chance. And so those comedians were really well prepared. It just looked as if they were just,
Yeah.
doing things left and right. And one tip I have for people when they start public speaking is to incorporate some form of, you could say, structured improvisation within their talk, because the audience loves it, they're surprised, and it doesn't matter if it goes perfectly well. It could be a mistake. The audience will enjoy that surprise and delight in the moment of not really knowing where it's going. So what I learned from Saturday Night Live was, one of the things I do now is I have this strange skill set called handwriting analysis, which
Exactly.
I learned from my mom 3 decades ago, and I became certified in the whole deal. And I will bring, if you and I are doing a session and you're the organizer of the event or someone there, before the talk, I'll say, who would like to have their handwriting analyzed? I'll have their handwriting, have them write something on stage, and then I'll analyze their handwriting in front of everybody. Now, you got to be careful with that because you want to make sure people feel seen in a positive way and not embarrassed.
Yeah.
Yet, it's still a sense of improvisation because I don't know too much of, I don't know anything about them up front. And in the spot, in this 3-minute piece, I'm improvising about what I'm seeing in this interaction. And people really respond to it. So if you have the opportunity as a speaker, you don't have to have everything memorized. As a matter of fact, it's not such a good idea.
Yeah.
Build in about 20% time where you can look around the room, read the room, and bring in some type of coaching, some type of improvisational element that speaks to your strengths, because that's what they're going to remember. Because public speaking is an experience for people, it's not a lecture anymore.
Exactly. Two-way, not one way.
Yeah.
I think, like, for me, it was, especially in the early days, I was just trying to build the muscle, and it's just like, okay, can I get on a stage and talk to people and survive? And then, as you've done it a few times, you grow your confidence. And I remember, like, it wasn't quite improvisation, but one of the things I did, which I remember being utterly terrified the first time I did it, but then it became something I did a lot, where instead of doing the Q&A at the end, I did it at the beginning. So I would say, like, okay, I've come to talk about storytelling, but I don't know what's useful for you unless you tell me. So I would get people to kind of shout out what they're interested in and write it on a flip chart. And then normally you found that people have similar questions. So I could then pretty much sculpt the talk based on the questions. And I think, like, there's that element of, like, yeah, you don't know what's coming your way, and you may, but eventually this is what kind of gives a lot of value to people and gives the audience, like, a new way of thinking about what they're doing sat there. But it's
Yeah, that's brilliant. And the reason that it works so well, if you're starting out with speaking and you think, well, I work in marketing. I'm not sure what to share with the audience. Well, if you are an expert on some level, if you've been working in marketing for 3 or 4 years or more, you know a lot more than you think you know. It's just you take for granted what you know. So your improvisational moments, like you said, are, you don't have to over prepare. You know what you know. And if, like you said, you ask people, what are your questions that you're skeptical about marketing? What are your questions of that you haven't figured out? What's a question that you don't think ChatGPT can answer? You ask people questions, and then that's, you demonstrate your expertise and you're customizing the talk from the get-go, and you're still prepared with a mini keynote, as I would call them today. Yet, like you said, you're an expert, Spencer, in public speaking and presentation. So if you start on that like you did, then you still can take pieces of your keynote and integrate it into the back end of starting off and setting the tone with, let's talk about what you want to talk about in a way that is beneficial to you. And that's an amazing tip for anyone who's reading or listening to this, is start with what you know and customize it for what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes that's the gap between things you have to say versus things people want to hear. So it's
Yeah, and they don't
great. Point.
always, even if you have the pre-call, which I do religiously, people don't always articulate what they want. So they say know your audience. It's sometimes hard to know the audience even
Yeah,
if you make the effort. If you are giving a public speech in, for example, the pharmaceutical company, you can ask them, but there's so many layers of bureaucracy that make it challenging for them to even share with you real issues that they're having in certain ways. And that's not just pharmaceutical, that's other industries too. So what you just did is bypassed the audience not always really sharing with you, not deliberately, but for different reasons, what it is they want in that moment by asking them what they want on a particular topic. And even if two or three people give you a good answer, that's enough for you to get going.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's turn it a bit towards what speaking and presenting and storytelling have done for you, like the impact they've had on you. Because, like you say, your three pivotal moments, you've done the Dale Carnegie course, there was the Saturday Night Live, and yeah, in the trenches as a teacher, which is, really the school of public speaking for sure. But like, what have you seen? Like, was it like a gradual thing, or were there pivotal moments where suddenly doors started opening much quicker, and you can look back and say, yeah, it's because I invested in this skill of speaking in front of people?
Well, with the teaching, in about 2013, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be teaching full time forever. I talked to my wife. We just got married around then. And I said, I really want to at least try public speaking. I was just coming into my 40s and I thought this would be the time to do it. And she's always supportive. And she's actually a high school teacher, a department head for or decades. And she says, I totally believe in you. So there was a few things there. I put myself in positions where I tested this hypothesis before I went in full time or even part time. The first thing was I got myself a TEDx talk, which is a whole separate conversation. The short answer to that is I put myself into mastermind groups. So some I paid for courses, and others I just hustled and I talked my way into.
Yeah,
And what I did is I let those groups know, not one in particular I wanted to, does anyone know, one of my dreams is to do a TEDx talk, like a lot of people. And I heard radio silence. And then one person said, oh, um, I know someone who's putting on this big event in Luxembourg. No promises, but you could apply. And that was enough where I applied and I ended up doing a talk in Luxembourg and it ended up getting 2.3 million views.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Right. So am I any different than you if you're listening? Not you, but someone listening to this? No. I had unique skill sets, but I also just made the effort. I asked, I put myself out there. And by the way, I was rejected two other times previously uh, for TEDx's in my own country. So I could have stopped and said, forget it. No, I said, no, I have something to say. I think I have an interesting perspective. Put myself out there. So I got this talk. That talk did not open up a door. It did not get me an agent. It did not get me an opportunity. It gave me confidence. It created a mindset that, oh, I just went to Luxembourg. I gave a live talk for 18 minutes in front of at a business school in this castle in Luxembourg.
Yeah.
It felt amazing. I was terrified, but it felt amazing. The organizer, who's seen a lot, he's a business professor and a speaker himself, Dirk Dannon, said, I loved your talk and we really responded to it. So I said, oh, I'm not going to judge myself fully on someone else, but he must have an eye. He's been out there. And it was these little pieces of confidence. And one thing that veteran speakers said to me, Spencer, at the beginning that kind of annoyed me, but now I sometimes use the same line because there's truth in it, is they use the word reps.
Yeah.
They say, how do you get better? And they say, reps. And you ask comedians, how do you get better? And they say reps. So for those of you who are wondering what exactly do they mean, they just mean the more you do it, the more you get better, like anything.
Yeah.
So I counted, I taught about 1,000 classes. This is no joke, in 12 years, overseas in Malaysia, in Toronto. I also, yeah, in Malaysia, I taught as a professor for a semester. I taught about 1,000 classes. Every time I started teaching classes from 2013 on, I said to myself, let me act like not only the best teacher I can be, but if I was in a speaking situation, how would I want to engage with you? What's my eye contact like? Am I smiling? Am I sending you positive energy? How am I organizing the content so that it's digestible? What's the takeaway that I want you to have from this, starting with the end in mind? And so every time I build curriculum, I thought long term, even though in the short term, this was my job and I enjoyed it. So it was reps, it was the TEDx talk, where putting myself out there. And I also was asked in Malaysia and in Canada and Toronto, would you teach other teachers how to do what you do, how to teach? And I thought, oh my, it's going to be a lot more work because I'm already like, working around the clock. And I saw it as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to go up in front of 150 teachers. I'm speaking with a whole faculty of other tough audience members who are thinking, who are you to teach me? And I never said no. So I counted that I did 150 free, wasn't paid, talks above and beyond in different countries, helping other teachers teach. And so
Yeah.
that made me a better speaker. That was reps, and that was teaching adults.
Yeah.
And by the time you and I met in about 2000, I'm going to say 18, 17,
Something like
maybe,
that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Look at all that I've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Totally.
right. And so that process is something that if you're listening and you say, why should I speak? Well, that you have to answer that question. And am I charismatic enough? I didn't consider myself any of those things. It was working on it, studying other people. And of course, you have to have some talent. I do have some talent. I'm not going to be falsely humble. There's something there. Just like whatever your profession is, I hope you have some natural talent. That's why, you're serving people, but you're good at it on some level. But most of any success I've had doing 70 speeches a year now started with putting myself out there on those different levels and feeling humiliated and embarrassed quite a bit, feeling like I screwed up. I made a lot of mistakes, that I'm not good enough, but I kept going. And now I still get nervous. The most successful performers, I could go on and on, athletes, Johnny Carson threw up before every appearance. He's more of an introvert. Bill Russell, the famous basketball player, 13 championships, threw up before every appearance. I don't like using that word usually, but it's to make a point. I don't throw up. But when I get up in front of 250 people like I did last week for leaders of the Marriott and Hilton hotels across Canada, I had a little bit of nerves because that's normal because you care if you're nervous. But part of it is like, I can't believe I do this for a living. Like I'm about to go up in front of all these people.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But once I get over that moment, I get up there and then I get in flow and I improvise a little, like we said, with a very highly structured speech. I interview people beforehand to make sure that I'm on point and I'm good. I know what I'm doing. But it was everything that came beneath the iceberg to get to that point that
Yeah.
makes me effective.
Yeah. Wow. Again, wow. A lot to unpack. I think like the reps thing, as you say, for me, I studied a lot about emotions and biology and how we are. And I think like for me, it's just this thing that we're all the same. Like our nerves come from our biology. There are no people who are not nervous. We just learn to manage it over time. And I think it's like if you look at it as just like fear, then it's like any other fear. Like, if you want to get over a fear of heights, you have to spend time at heights. And it's the same with speaking. The more you do, the less scary it becomes over time. And I love the thing about, like you say, like, yeah, I wasn't charismatic and I felt the same way. Like, but what you suddenly realize is the time on the stage again and again and again makes you charismatic because it gives you that ability to be in a room of people and be okay with small silences. And you will ask people what they, like it just changes how you are with people. So I think there's a lot of things that you maybe somebody listening will not try and do public speaking because they think they haven't got whatever it is, but actually you'll probably get it from doing something like speaking.
Yeah, and you find your inner charisma. Charisma is a general word. I gave a talk to leading pharmaceutical physicians for one of the biggest companies in the world, and some of them had an issue with the word charisma. They said, "I don't need charisma. I'm a leader in liver health or heart disease." Or, and I said, "You're right." But what charisma is, I think, in today's world is it's uh, it's exuding a level of humility and not knowing everything, yet it's a confidence in knowing what you know and you're bringing to the table. So it's this dynamic between humility is not thinking of yourself less. It's not thinking less of your. It's not thinking of yourself less. It's thinking less of yourself. I screwed that up. It's thinking less of yourself in this context. So it's not
Yeah.
really about me or you. It's about the audience.
Yeah.
And it's also an inner light. There was this documentary on Netflix that I just watched with my wife about Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, which I never thought I would be interested in. But the story is about their audition process and their performers,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a lot of it's superficial, but not all of it. So one of the leaders said that woman who's auditioning, a young woman, she has an inner light. There's a light that exudes out of her, and I said, that's what charisma is. It's a light that shines out of a person where you feel good around them. You
Yeah.
feel there's a positivity. You can still be skeptical, but there's something about them that makes you feel inspired. And I noticed that at the end of my presentations, a word that people say to me without patting myself on the back is, "You really inspired me. That was really inspiring." And
Yeah.
so to me, Spencer, that's my charisma, is my ability to inspire. Your
Yeah.
charisma might make people feel more secure with their own understanding of a particular topic. So it's not about your looks. It's not about how you dress. It's not about some flashy tactic or manipulative thing that someone read in the dark arts of persuasion. It's not that. It's
No.
not that. But you know when you're in a room with someone, when they're speaking or one on one, and you have this, I'm comfortable with you.
Yeah.
I feel like I know you on some level, even though we don't really know each other. And that could be virtually like this, or it could be in person. And you can develop that even if you're introverted.
Yeah.
And so it should give you hope that if you say, I don't know if I have it, you may not have it. You're right. Or you might be looking at yourself in a way that doesn't give yourself enough credit. That you have a light within you, without sounding too fluffy or spiritual here. You do have a light. It just might shine in a different way. You just have to get out there to test it and
Yeah.
not just dismiss it. Because I know speakers who have tried, who are business leaders, and they said to me, Jamie, can I talk to you for a few minutes? And they went out and they got bad feedback for whatever reason by a few people. And they've never spoken again. They just shut it down after one or two. And I didn't judge that. I also got times when people gave me feedback that hurt. I just kept
We all
going.
do. We all do.
Yeah, you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's yeah, this for sure. It's that idea that yeah, you can never please 100% of the people 100% of the time. So you have to let a lot of that go. That's
Yeah,
definitely for sure.
true.
But going back to this idea of like having this light in you that people see, I think even in the beginning, like what I've definitely seen over the years from seeing many speakers is if you care about what you're talking about, if you have a passion for what you're talking about, or even if you just care about the audience, like you just want to help them do something better next week, this I think instantly gives you like a, I don't know the word, like a magnetism for the audience,
Yes.
because I think they pick up very quickly that you care about them, and I think
Yes.
that's a great place to start.
That is so true. A friend of mine, Mark Bowden, who you probably know of
Yes,
or
the
know.
body language guy. Yeah,
Yeah, we're close friends, and he's been a great friend and mentor since I started speaking. Mark said something, to paraphrase him, and I think he's one of the maybe the best speaker I've ever seen live. He said to me, don't show them your expertise. show them how much you care.
Yeah.
Show them your passion. And sometimes people say, well, I don't want to be one of those cheesy, personal development speakers and be this rah rah type of person. And my response is, don't worry, you're not, because the people that you see who are over the top, do you know the amount of energy it takes? And the type of, you don't have to be them. You don't have to copy them. If you just bring up your energy, like I'll do it right now. If I was on a keynote with 100 people online, you and I are having a one-on-one conversation. We still want to have a conversation because a good speech is actually a conversation as much as possible,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? We don't want to lecture and talk down to people. They hate that. But
Yeah.
what I would do is I might bring it up a little bit like this at times and modulate and talk soft. And then, Spencer, I love speaking. This is why I love speaking. It helps me impact people, drive change, drive relational change, drive leadership change. It helps me help other people become their best selves in the area that we're speaking of. It helps me help whatever it is. So all I did there was I brought it up a notch. I kept eye contact, and I'm exuding the light, whatever light I have within me, to you. I'm transmitting that. And so one, that's a great piece of advice, is show
Yeah.
people. You said it, I'm reiterating what you said. Once you're up on stage, it's too late to figure out if you haven't prepared. So hopefully you prepared. You then let go. This is what Mark said on my TEDx talk. This is what I met him. Is the first time I ever got a coach. Like, Spencer, you're an amazing coach. I got a coach, and he kept 80% and 20% he moved around. And I said to him, well, what happens if the audience doesn't accept my premise of blah, blah? And he said, Jamie, just have fun and show them how much you love this. He says, as a matter of fact, why don't you add that at the beginning? Say to them, I love what I'm doing here. I said, really? Direct. And if you watch the first 3 minutes of my TEDx talk, I'm exuding a love for what I'm doing. And before, I came in a little more serious. I'm the expert, Spencer. I'm here all the way from Luxembourg, from Toronto. I need to really get a, and he says, no, throw that out the window. Don't even wear a suit for this. Wear like a cool Prada shirt or something. Right? I don't know, whatever. And I said, okay. So I came in there and I was like, not trying to be cool. I was like, I love what I'm doing here. This is what we're going to do. And then the rest flowed.
Yeah.
And
And that
people
also,
respond to it.
and that also gives you that extra 20% energy when you start talking about why you care about it, why you love something.
Yeah.
That is actually what lifts you up to give you that energy anyway. And I think, like, for me, it's something that I was taught, and I kind of taught it because of video, because obviously video flattens us. So if we're 20% more in our voice and our movement, then it actually is really good for the audience. And I think one of the things that took me a really long time to get comfortable with is being more exaggerated, because for me, or for anybody doing it, it feels a bit strange because it's not your normal level, but for the audience it looks totally normal and totally great. And I think that sometimes there's a difference between that inner narrative in our head versus the audience is sitting there thinking, this is great, and you're thinking, oh my, I look silly, or I'm doing too much, or, but yeah, there's a lot in that, adding 20% to yourself when you're doing stuff.
Yeah. And I remember when I went to teach in Malaysia, teachers here said, you might want to tone it down, because you, when you're here, you're like Dead Poet Society, and
Yeah.
that works. But there, it's a bit much. And I nodded. I said thank you, and I went and did the same thing. And on the first day of classes there, I got on the chair and I did this whole "I Am Canada" rant, which was a popular commercial in the '90s. And
Okay.
they all get their phones out. They're all taking pictures, and they love that style. And the same in Luxembourg. Someone said, you know what, in Europe in general, which is a pretty big generality, they're all about content, and they don't really like, that flashiness. So just tone it down. Again, I nodded, I said thank you. And I actually asked Mark about that, who's British, and he says, no, do your thing.
Yeah.
And 2.3 million views. So someone thought that that it
Then
worked.
it's good.
Maybe it annoyed a few Brits or a few other people in Europe, which
So
isn't
be
fair.
it. So be
So
it.
be it. You got to be authentic to you.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm conscious of time. So, like, a couple of final things. Like, what kind of advice would you give to somebody listening who maybe is starting out at the beginning of the journey and thinking, yeah, I want to be better at this speaking thing? What advice would you give them?
Find a place to speak for free. So it could be a community group. It could be, well, I think once you put it out there, I mean, I write everything down in a journal, right? Like I write as simple as it sounds or corny, like I am a professional speaker, or I want more opportunities to speak, and start listening and looking out for those options. And I think also, depending on your area, so if you're in sales or marketing or AI, there are opportunities to speak at, to do short webinars on areas like that. So I would go on Facebook, or if you don't like Facebook, go on some type of social media group and just write on like whatever your area of expertise that you could potentially speak in. And that's a good place to start, is saying, what am I going to speak about? And so you, if you can find something that's trending now, like AI, or connect AI to marketing or AI to sales, or an area in your field that you know is trending. And if you go on a Facebook group and you look at AI groups and you join all of them, and then like I did with the TEDx, what did I do? I wrote on 3 or 4 groups I was in, hey, I'm looking to do a TEDx. Does anybody know of one coming up? And one person in one of those groups said yes after months. So
Ah,
I
yeah.
would do 3 things. I would find what your topic is you want to speak on. And if someone asks you, come up with one line, and it can simply be AI for sales. You don't have a whole sales pitch. AI for sales, or AI for sales in the pharmaceutical area, something. And the second thing is, join right away when you watch this or read this, social media groups that won't cost you anything, and look at what they're doing in those groups and what topics are coming up, and look for, in those groups there will always be at some point someone who says, if people want to apply, there's something coming up. And the third thing is, that's on you. So look in your local community, virtually or otherwise, as to when there are opportunities for a 10-minute talk, a 20-minute talk, or do what I did, apply to several different TEDx talks with a theme that fits their brand. And you might get rejected to 9, but if you get into one, it's going to be a game changer, like it was for me, because it's going to give you the confidence that, hey, I can do this.
Yes, and you only need one, and that sets you on your way. Great,
You only need one. You only
yeah,
need one. Yes.
great advice. So, how can people find you after they've watched this? Where? How can they connect with you? How can they learn more about you?
A few different ways. LinkedIn is a, I'm on there every day. The second thing is, I have 2 podcasts that I'm proud of. My own, one's called Signature Leadership on Apple and YouTube, and the other one I do for a CEO advisory board group called Tech Canada. It's called the Leadership Standard. And I have some of the leading experts in the world, including excellent public speakers, where I ask them about speaking. And that's a way to connect, and also to see what I'm up to. Because being a professional speaker, the actual speaking part of it is, I would say, about 40% of my job, and 60% of it is putting myself out there through LinkedIn content, through podcasts, which I didn't have a year and a half ago, by the way. It's
Yeah,
always finding ways to get yourself out there so people are drawn or magnetized your word to you. And that's what you can see. If you're interested in speaking, look at what speakers who are doing what you want to do. What are they doing? What is their profile like? How do they describe themselves? Those are the things that you can replicate on a certain level to jump in instead of overthinking it, because they didn't know what they were doing either. Everybody's making it up as they go.
yeah. Totally. Everybody's making it up. I say this. I say this a lot.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
Really
it's true.
great. I'll make sure that I'll put the all the links that you mentioned into the description below the video so people can click on them very easily. So yeah, all that remains is to say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you and sharing your experience of your some of the amazing and crazy things that you've done in your life. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thanks, Spencer.
Cool. See you around soon.